Hi folks, and welcome to Mountain Talk here on WMMT. I'm Parker Hobson. So, no matter what his height might have been listed at on the back of his literary basketball card, we lost a giant last month when the great Gurney Norman passed on at age 88. A native of the Allays coal camp near Hazard in Perry County, Kentucky, Gurney was probably best known as a singular, groundbreaking writer, especially as the author of the books Divine Right's Trip, Kinfolks, and Allegiance. But he was also so many things: a community arts organizer, a filmmaker, a longtime teacher at the University of Kentucky, and a beloved mentor to countless young writers and artists from both inside and outside of the mountains. He was also a longtime good friend and co-conspirator of ours here at Appalshop. And while we'll have more about Gurney coming up soon on Mountain Talk, this week we wanted to share with you a special part of his legacy with us here at Appalshop. And that is an amazing piece of work called Ancient Creek, a story of Gurney's that we'll hear read by Gurney himself. Originally released by our own June Appal Records as a spoken word album back in 1976, Ancient Creek is a rollicking, one-of-a-kind epic folktale, existing in the greater Appalachian Jack Tale tradition, but also blazing its own ground in the way only Gurney could. It tells the story of King Condominium III, a mountainous hill region that sounds an awful lot like Appalachia, and the unquenchable revolutionary spirit of the people who live in those hills, or in Gurney's words, quote, the upstart hillbillies who have been so unwise as to defy the edicts of the king, end quote. And while normally Mountain Talk runs for just an hour, today on the show, we're honoring Gurney's boundary-pushing artistic vision by stretching the bounds of our own Mountain Talk time slot to bring you, in full, Gurney's own reading of Ancient Creek. It runs about 71 minutes, all told, and the version here is drawn from our original LP release here at June Appal Records. We'll jump in a couple times for quick breaks at the top and bottom of the hour, but aside from that, get warm, get cozy, and we'll let Gurney Norman take it away. Here's Ancient Creek.
Ancient Creek. One time there was this old king named King Condominium III. Sent his army out to conquer a certain mountain district that never had been conquered before. The old king already ruled about half the world, but he wasn't satisfied with just half. He wanted it all. He had heard that this hill domain had a lot of beautiful rivers and valleys and meadows and great herds and flocks of wild game. The mountains had a lot of timber, too, and other natural resources that the king was greedy for. So he sent his armies down into the hills to dispossess the natives and pacify them, then put them to work as laborers for his empire. When the king got word that his army had everything in the hill domain under control, he decided he'd go down and look at it, check things over, see what he got. But before he could get started, first one thing, then another came up to keep old King Condominium from going. The king was real busy in those days. His armies were conquering places faster than he could go to see them. He had 2 or 3 wars going on overseas, and there was a lot of intrigue in the main castle that distracted his mind. The king had 2 or 3 mistresses to tend to, not to mention Queen Condominium, who was always wanting this and wanting that. She never was satisfied. So time went along, and old King Condominium got to be an old man, way up in 80. And he still never had got around to going to visit that part of his kingdom that they call the hill domain. In fact, the king had just about forgot he even owned the hill domain. Till one spring he got sick, and his doctor said to him, now, King, you've got to get away and rest up if you intend to live much longer. You've been working too hard and worrying about things too much. Your blood pressure's up, your heart's weak, you've lost your hearing, and your eyesight's getting worse every day. The thing for you to do is go off in the mountains somewhere and live quiet for a while. You'll feel a whole lot better if you do. Well, King Condominium liked that advice. Breathing that pure mountain air and drinking that sweet mountain spring water would surely be a tonic to his system. And no doubt the mountain people, with their quaint customs and odd manner of speech and dress, would be an entertainment for him and the members of his court. "Doc," said the king, "go pack your bags. We're all going down to the mountains for a vacation." He told the queen to get her stuff together and be ready to leave at daybreak. The king ordered his chief assistants to get to work on preparations to move the whole government to Holiday Land, which was a seat of administration in the hills, as well as a famous spa. Then he told his secretary to send word to the Black Duke, the royal administrator of the hills, to get ready, because the whole royal scene was coming his way fast. "Oh my God!" the Black Duke shrieked when he learned of the king's impending arrival. "This is a disaster! Hugo, come in here on the double." Hugo limped into the Black Duke's private chamber on the top floor of the administration building at Holiday Land. He was a one-eyed albino hunchback who worked as the Black Duke's chief assistant in the royal bureaucracy of the hills. The Duke treated Hugo like a dog, but he depended on the hunchback utterly. For not only did Hugo possess the physical strength of 10 men, he was a brilliant intellect as well, who gave the Black Duke his best ideas and masterminded his most complex and daring schemes. "Did you get the news?" the Duke wailed. "Yes, Black Duke," said Hugo calmly. "What are we going to do?" cried the Duke. "There's no cause for alarm, Black Duke," said Hugo calmly. "Everything is in order to ensure that the king and his court will enjoy their time among us, and that upon his departure the king will indeed be well pleased." "How can you say that?" the Black Duke shouted. "This domain is a disaster area. The king wants to vacation in these crummy hills. He should have come 50 years ago. The region was a natural wonderland then. The rivers were pure, the virgin timberlands were untouched, wild creatures great and small abounded. Now it's an industrial wasteland. It's the armpit of the empire. The stately trees have been ruthlessly slashed from the hillsides. The mountains have been gutted of their coal and stone and mica and iron and oil and natural gas. The rivers have been poisoned by acid waste from open pit mining. The fish are dead, the game is gone, the air is polluted, and the once proud and independent mountaineers have been reduced to vassalage. The king knows nothing of this. He's expecting to find the Garden of Eden, not this insane socio-economic nightmare." "Peace, Black Duke," said Hugo calmly. "Peace," the Black Duke shouted. "My own personal head is about to be severed from my body, to be suspended from a flagpole to turn slowly, slowly in the wind, and I'm supposed to listen to a one-eyed albino hunchback tell me peace? Good God, man, don't you know a revolution is brewing in these hills? Don't you know that the rebel outlaw Jack is on the loose again? Haven't you heard the reports from Findlay County, where overt acts of defiance against King Condominium's rule have been occurring with alarming frequency? I've been assuring the king for years that all rebellion among the mountain people has been stamped out. If he finds out that I've been lying, falsifying my reports, he'll hang me. Oh, Hugo, what am I to do?" "Leave everything to me," said Hugo calmly. "I have a plan." "A plan?" asked the Black Duke. "A very simple plan, my lord. As you know, the king is old and infirm now. His eyesight is failing. His hearing is nearly gone. He will have little strength for venturing to outlying places where he might see the wretched mess that has been made in the hill domain. He will want to spend his time in his condominium here at Holiday Land. He will be safe from assassins and troublemakers here. And as the king vacations, so will the members of his retinue. They will find diversion enough at Holiday Land's swimming pool, skating rink, tennis courts, squash courts, handball courts, shuffleboard courts, golf course, skeet shooting range, skydiving field, scuba diving lake, where they may also sail boats, water ski, and practice fly rod fishing, after which they will enjoy the sauna, steam room, whirlpool bath, massage parlor, movie theater, chapel, meditation hall, photography dark room, pinochle, canasta, bridge, poker, and other card games, including the curious one played by the natives called Rook. In the mornings, they will be enticed by the champagne brunch, and in the evenings made merry by the smorgasbord in Appalachian Hall, followed by dancing and drinks in the famous Cumberland Lounge, where the music of Lance Cloud and his orchestra and the comic routines of Skinny Lewis and Bruno the Talking Dummy are featured nightly. Black Duke pursed his lips and thought for a moment. Then he said, "There must be something more." "Something more exactly, sire," said Hugo. "It has already been arranged." "Arranged?" said the Black Duke suspiciously. "Yes, sire," said Hugo. "We have arranged a special theatrical performance for the king's amusement, should he show signs of restlessness and have an urge to leave the compound here at Holiday Land." Said the Duke, as he went to the wall and pressed a small button. A large portrait of King Condominium III swung out, revealing a well-stocked liquor cabinet in the wall from which the Duke extracted a bottle of brandy. Pouring himself a drink, offering Hugo none, he said, "About this plan of yours, Hugo, this theatrical performance. Tell me more." "Well, it's a variety show, Black Duke," said Hugo. "A full evening of comedy and song performed entirely by native mountaineers. It's called Haw Haw. I and members of my staff are in control of the script, of course, but the performers will all be hill folk who are sure to amuse the king with their quaint customs and odd manner of speech and dress." Said the Duke, sipping his brandy. "Go on." "I guarantee, sire, that with such entertainment as I and my staff are preparing, the king will have little interest in going sightseeing about the hill domain. I can also assure you, sire, that when the king has completed his stay with us here at Holiday Land and has returned to his castle rested and fit again, he will not forget that you, the Black Duke, were responsible for his wonderful time in the hills." The Black Duke smiled as he poured a brandy for Hugo. "Hugo," said the Duke, "you're brilliant. What would I do without you? Have a drink. Tell me all about this Haw Haw show." "Thank you, sire," said the hunchback as he took the glass from the Duke. "But better than telling you about Haw Haw, why don't you come witness a rehearsal? The natives are rehearsing this very hour." "Excellent suggestion," said the Duke. As he quaffed his brandy, he said, "I may be wrong about this, Hugo, but I've got a hunch that this could be the start of something great." As Hugo and the Black Duke were crossing the central courtyard of Holiday Land toward the theater where the rehearsal was in progress, a dusty messenger ran up, and after saluting, handed the Duke a sealed envelope. "What's this?" asked the Duke, somewhat annoyed by the interruption. "It's from Captain Heath, sire," said the messenger. "There's trouble in Findlay County." Turning his back to Hugo and the messenger, the Duke broke the seal of the envelope and took out the letter. "Sire, guerrilla bandits have defied the king's edicts in Findlay County. Raids have netted several prisoners, but many more are still at large. Request reinforcements be sent from Holiday Land immediately to help my outnumbered forces quell these unruly heathen and restore order and respect for the high ideals and values of His Majesty King Condominium III. Signed, Captain Heath." "The vicious devils," the Black Duke muttered to himself. Angrily, he crumpled the message into a ball and threw it on the astroturf at his feet. Then, in a firm voice, he commanded, "Hugo, sound assembly. Mobilize the entire army and all support personnel in the courtyard immediately. We are marching to Findlay County to assist Captain Heath in his hour of need, and I want to address all personnel before we go." The men and women and soldiers of Holiday Land poured from all the buildings and playing fields of the vast complex and dashed to the formation in the central courtyard as Hugo blew the bugle energetically. In a few minutes, 5,000 uniformed kingsmen, carrying weapons in full field packs, plus 5,000 more support personnel, were standing in perfect ranks in front of the Duke, who was perched on the top step of the entrance to the armory. The Duke's eyes misted over in pride as he watched the loyal people of his command respond with such eagerness and dedication to whatever cause the Duke would announce was theirs. Around the courtyard were the buildings that made up Holiday Land, a small outpost of progress in the heart of the alien mountains. The Duke looked at the flag waving grandly from the topmost spire of the administration building. He looked at the grand arena at the far end of the compound, where the great marble statue of King Condominium stood. The Black Duke looked at the mountains in the distance beyond Holiday Land, at the blue sky beyond the mountains, and at the faint outline of God's visage barely visible in that nether sphere beyond the sky. The Duke wasn't a religious man exactly, But he was not utterly devoid of a sense of awe and respect for the divine Creator who had made the Condominium Empire what it was, and who continued to bless and protect this outpost from the hostile forces arrayed against it. For as the king himself had once written, there are no atheists among imperialists when the natives are on a rampage. Men, women, all soldiers and support personnel of the Holiday Land Command, said the Duke. I have just received word that the natives are restless in Findlay County. Captain Heath has asked our assistance in dealing with them upstart hillbillies who have been so unwise as to defy the edicts of King Condominium III. We'll be marching to Findlay County this afternoon, so if any of you need to have a quick turn in the whirlpool bath or a double martini on the rocks in the Cumberland room, you have 30 minutes before we take off. We'll be gone an unspecified length of time, so be sure to bring extra sunglasses, double knit suits, and turtleneck sweaters. Are there any questions? Aye, sire, a social scientist called out from the rear ranks. Do you think we'll be coming back to Holiday Land before the king gets here? I'm a consultant for the big show we're planning for the king. I've got a lot of work to do to prepare for the performance of Haw Haw. Good question, the Duke replied. Let's see the hands of all people who are in any way involved with preparations for the king's visit to Holiday Land. 2,000 hands went up, most of them among the civilian professional workers in the Royal Department of Tourism and Recreation. Excellent, said the Duke. All you people are excused from this expedition. I also want one platoon of King's men to stay behind as well to guard Holiday Land. As you have no doubt heard, that renegade Jack is on the loose again. He may be so bold as to attack Holiday Land if we let down our guard. The remainder of you will follow me to Findlay County. Are there any other questions? Aye, sire, said a lady psychiatrist who specialized in the provincial mind. Could you tell us what form of transportation we'll be taking to Findlay County? We're going to ski, said the Black Duke. A silence followed the Duke's remark, broken here and there by low mutterings and rumblings in the ranks. At last the lady psychiatrist called out, But sire, it's April. There's no snow on the ground. There'd be no snow on the ski slope either if we didn't manufacture it, the Duke replied. Use your imagination, my dear. Since there is no snow on the ground, the guerrillas will not expect us to arrive in Findlay County on skis. We will simply rig up our snow machine on wheels and have it precede us along the abandoned strip mines all the way from here to Findlay County. Bravo, someone in the middle rank shouted when the Duke announced his idea. Others took up the cry until all 10,000 people in the formation were applauding and cheering the ingenuity of the Black Duke. The Duke bowed in recognition of the applause. Then he shouted, Long live King Condominium III! All glory and praise to his handiwork! And the multitude replied, Long live the king! Trudge, 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 ski, ski, ski. In spite of the sleet and snow cascading back from the machine, the men and women of the Holiday Land Command pressed on, forever on, a perfect column of fours, winding around the hillsides, skiing behind the huge machine, which lay a carpet of white over the barren strip mine spoil banks. Onward, the Black Duke called out, onward for the king! The marchers broke into song then, a rousing rendition of the famous anthem that for generations had inspired a nation on the move. Onward, Condominium soldiers. We are marching onwards over hill and dale, which we have paved over and put up for sale. Natives will not stop us. We will take their homes, while King Condominium reigns upon his throne. The Duke halted the column then and led the marchers in the national cheer. We've put nature on the run to make the world safe for fun. Yea, raw fun. The cheer echoed through the narrow valleys of the hills as the long column resumed its trek along the carpet of pure white artificial snow. Captain Heath and a platoon of King's men met the Duke and his legion at the Findlay County line. After telling the people of his command to fall out and work on their suntans while awaiting further orders, the Duke and Hugo marched on into the town of Blaine with the captain, who gave his report as they walked. "The culprit struck first on Hitch Branch in a Trace Fork area, sire," said Captain Heath. "Our patrol caught a dozen of them red-handed. Other patrols are pursuing an unknown number who got away. With assistance from your troop, we are sure to catch those who remain at large." "What exactly did you catch these culprits doing?" the Black Duke inquired. "Telling old stories in the forbidden dialect, sire. They were sitting around an outdoor fire on a hillside, laughing and talking. 2 men were caught whittling strange images from blocks of cedar. 2 women were caught with forbidden medicinal herbs drying on racks outside their houses. Another was heard singing a forbidden ballad. One old man was making an unauthorized wooden chair by hand." "What kind of chair?" inquired the Duke. "A big rocker, sire, made of black walnut with the bottom of woven hickory bark." "Treasonous wretch," said the Black Duke angrily. "I trust you dealt with this chairmaker appropriately." "Aye, sire, that we did," said Captain Heath with a grin of satisfaction. "Our tribunal has fined him 20% of his protein for 5 years and sentenced him to lifelong labor in the furniture factory. The women drying the herbs have been dispatched to Holiday Land to serve cocktails in the Cumberland room." "And the storytellers?" asked the Duke. "We dealt with them most severely, sire. There's been a rash of this kind of subversion, and we wanted to set an example. We cut out their tongues and ordered their protein rations reduced by half until further notice. We sentenced half of them to life at hard labor as public relations men for various imperial enterprises, and the remainder as scriptwriters for an epic film based on the life and work of King Condominium III. 3 of the captives have been temporarily spared, sire, until you have had a chance to interrogate them personally." "Excellent, Captain Heath," said the Black Duke, as Hugo nodded his agreement with these sentiments. "Excellent work indeed. I think, however, that sterner measures are called for in the wake of this outrage by the people of Trace Fork. That whole area has become a hotbed of dissent, and an example must be made. I want all the people in that hollow resettled in the workers' barracks at Holiday Land to serve as a labor pool for our coming expansion program. I want all houses, barns, schools, churches, gardens, wells, cemeteries, trees, shrubs, flowers, and meadows in that whole valley bulldozed away. Then I want a dam built across the mouth of the creek that will flood the entire valley. When the lake has formed, I want townhouses and condominiums built on the hills around to serve as 2nd, 3rd, and 4th homes for 1,000 Kingsmen and their families. The surrounding forest region is to be off limits to all native mountaineers forever. Got that?" "Aye, sire. It shall be done." "Good. Now about these prisoners you say you're holding. When can I see them?" "They're waiting for you now," said the captain. "I'm sure you will find them most interesting." The Black Duke and his ever-present companion, Hugo, followed Captain Heath into the center of the little town called Blaine. It was just a village, really. A single street of stores, shops, and business buildings stretched along the riverbank, with a scattering of houses on the hill that rose sharply from the river. The principal building on Main Street was the old brick courthouse, a relic of the pre-conquest architecture the Duke so despised. The Duke hated dingy little outpost villages like Blaine. He looked forward to the day when the last of them would be razed to the ground and all residences and businesses in the hills would be in centralized compounds such as Holiday Land. As they approached the courthouse, the Duke turned to go up the steps to the jail, but to his surprise, Captain Heath touched his arm and directed him another block on down the street to a grimy office building. "I thought prisoners were kept in the jail behind the courthouse," said the Duke. "Ordinarily they are," answered the captain as they climbed the stairs to the 2nd floor. "But as you will see, we have taken special precautions with these prisoners. I thought it best to say as little as possible about them until we had more privacy, Black Duke. But now that we are alone, I can tell you, sire, the 3 young men you will soon interrogate are very special prisoners indeed. We're holding them in conditions of strictest secrecy." "Explain yourself," the Duke commanded. Smiling triumphantly, Captain Heath said, "Sire, the prisoners being held just beyond this door are none other than the notorious Will and Tom, brothers of the even more notorious enemy of the realm, the infamous Jack." "What?" the Duke erupted. "You've captured Will and Tom, brothers of the same Jack who for years has remained immune to all efforts of the authorities to capture him and put an end to his rebellious activities?" "We have, sire," said the captain. "The capture of Will and Tom is the most significant development in the history of our efforts to end rebellion in the mountains." "This is fantastic news," the Duke exulted. I knew the Duke would be pleased, said Captain Heath. Pleased, said the Duke, I'm ecstatic. This is the break I've been waiting for. With Will and Tom in custody, we are sure to lure that rascal Jack into a trap, for it is well known that his loyalty to his brothers knows no bounds. Think of the impression it will make upon the king if I present him the arch enemy of the realm, bound in chains, as a gift when he arrives next week at Holidayland. It would indeed be an impressive gesture, said Captain Heath. Come, sire, the criminals are waiting. The three prisoners were being held in the offices of the Broad, Form, and Deed Land and Title Company. Broad and Form were away at Holidayland with their mistresses, but Deed was there, Colonel Deed as he preferred to be called, with two uniformed king's men who stood above the prostrate forms of the prisoners. The king's men snapped to attention and saluted when the Duke and his party entered the office. Colonel Deed stood up, but instead of saluting, he crossed the room and held out his hand to his old pal, the Black Duke. The Black Duke and Colonel Deed had been comrades in the great pacification campaigns that had followed the invasion of the hills many years before. He was a coal operator now, and an officer in the military reserves, who enjoyed performing occasional police duties in the hill domain. When Captain Heath's men captured the three rebels, Colonel Deed had been quick to volunteer his office as a temporary jail, and to offer himself as commander of the guard until the Duke could get there and take charge personally. Well, Colonel Deed, said the Duke as the two men shook hands, I understand you have some rather special prisoners for me to interview. I certainly have, said Colonel Deed, as he directed the Duke's attention to the corner of the room where three young men lay in a heap, bound together by chains which held them fast to a radiator against the wall. I'm going to stop there for a few minutes and we can stretch and so on, and I'm going to take a hit of beer.
You're listening to Gurney Norman reading Ancient Creek. We're going to cut in for just a second here to hear from some folks who make this radio station possible. But stay right here. There's so much more coming up. Welcome back to Mountain Talk. Today on the show, in honor of the great East Kentucky writer Gurney Norman, who sadly we lost last month, we're hearing Gurney himself reading his epic folktale, Ancient Creek. Where we'll pick the story up, our heroes are just about to get interrogated by agents of King Condominium III.
I certainly have, said Colonel Deed as he directed the Duke's attention to the corner of the room where three young men lay in a heap, bound together by chains which held them fast to a radiator against the wall. One was stretched unconscious on the floor. The other two were awake, but in such weakened condition they could barely lift their heads to see who had come into the room. Which ones are Will and Tom? Asked the Duke. The ones with their eyes open, sire, said Captain Heath. Who is that other wretch? His name is Wilgus Collier, said the captain. He lives on Trace Fork among a whole nest of colliers over there. That's all we know about him so far. He was with Will and Tom when they were apprehended. Good work, said the Duke. He walked closer to the prisoners. Holding his nose against the stale odor that arose from their sweating bodies and ragged clothes, the Duke leaned over and shouted in Tom's ear, "Where's Jack?" Then in Will's ear he yelled, "Where's your criminal rebel outlaw brother Jack?" The Duke started to kick the prisoners, but Hugo moved swiftly to relieve him of that chore. Cuffing the brothers about the head and ears, he snarled, "Answer the Black Duke! Where's your brother hiding?" The boys opened their eyes and glanced at Hugo, then around the room at the officials who stood regarding them contemptuously. The Black Duke's face was red with anger. Captain Heath looked at them with cool disdain. Colonel Deed grinned at them malevolently. The two king's men, standing beside the prisoners at parade rest, studied them coldly. Hugo studied them too, but his single eye was not cold. It was alive with curiosity and alertness as it looked first at one brother, then the other. Will and Tom were terrified of the hunchback who loomed above them so menacingly, but his face, for all its warts and scars, possessed a mysterious quality that attracted and held the boy's attention. "We don't know where Jack is," said Will. "We ain't seen Jack in a long time," said Tom. "Lying dogs," the Black Duke hissed. "Treacherous curs," sneered Captain Heath. "Hated infidels," Colonel Deed snarled. "Stupid white trash," said the king's men roughly. "Unwise peasants," Hugo muttered as he gave each of the young men a fierce shake. Then, backhanding Tom across the face, Hugo shouted, "Talk! What do you want me to say?" Tom wailed. "Where's Jack hiding?" the Black Duke demanded. "I don't know," Tom answered, holding his hand to his flaming jaw. "We ain't seen Jack in a long time," said Will. The Duke leaned forward again and touched Tom's nose with his own. "Do you mean to deny that you are co-conspirators with Jack in fomenting rebellion against the rule of King Condominium III? That you meet with him regularly to plan and carry out your evil design to thwart the king's plans to exploit this mountain region of its last usable tree, its last ounce of coal and oil and stone and mica and iron and natural gas, and its last human being as cheap labor, and then to turn the whole region into a playground for the loyal professionals who have given their lives and talents to the king, so that the condominium empire can spread not only across the mountains, plains, deserts, lake regions, and coastal zones of this continent, but across the entire hemisphere, and finally all the hemispheres of the earth, in preparation for the day when we can then begin to colonize the other planets in our solar system? Do you deny that you have been assisting your brother Jack to agitate among the native hill folk, holding illegal assembly, encouraging forbidden language, forbidden arts and crafts, beliefs and activities? Do you deny that you, in league with Jack and other traitors whose names we do not yet know, specifically have a plan to cause disturbances while the king vacations among us next week?" "We ain't got no such of a plan," said Tom. "Then who organized the treasonous, hedonistic, pagan ritual orgy on Trace Fork night before last? Was that not part of your revolutionary program?" "Well, that was just folks getting together," said Tom. "Just neighbors associating," said Will. "Banding and confederating, you mean," Colonel Deed hissed. "Did you perhaps have forbidden discussion about the old days?" Captain Heath interjected. "Did you perhaps use words in the forbidden dialect that may have evoked unauthorized images in the mind of an earlier, more pagan time?" "We talked about coon hunting some, if that's what you mean," said Will. Hugo kicked Will with the side of his foot. "Do not make stupid jests in the presence of the Black Duke." But even as he snarled, even as he kicked, something in Hugo's face, something behind his eye, communicated a subtle message to Will. Something in the hunchback's face made Will suddenly unafraid, even as Hugo kicked him and Tom several times more. "This is getting us nowhere," said the Duke disgustedly. "Shoot them full of truth serum. Give them sodium pentothal. I'll teach these oafs to withhold information from a representative of the king." Hugo expressed serious reservations about administering a potion as strong as sodium pentothal to prisoners in such weakened condition as Will and Tom and Wilgus. But the Duke said, "Bah, what do I care about the condition of these foolish peasants? Fill their veins full. Let's hear what the wretches have to say when they are no longer able to tell their stupid lies." Captain Heath's assistants administered the sodium pentothal to Wilgus. Soon after, the Black Duke began the interrogation. "What is your name, young man?" asked the Duke. "I am my father's son," Wilgus replied. The Black Duke slapped Wilgus across the face with his gloves. "Idiot, that's no answer. Tell me your name. What were you doing in the company of two notorious rebels on Trace Fork the night of the pagan ritual orgy around the campfire?" "Miracles, signs, and wonders," came the reply. "Impertinent fool," the Duke shouted, striking Wilgus again with his gloves. "Answer the questions." Hugo touched the Black Duke lightly on the arm. "Perhaps the prisoner is talking in subtleties," said Hugo. "If we listen, we may find secret codes in the strange things that he says." "Bah!" snarled the Duke. "I have no time for subtleties. I want the story. Talk, you peon, sing!" And Wilgus began to sing. "I love to tell the story of unseen things above, of Jesus and His glory, of Jesus and His love." "What inanity is this?" the Duke protested. But Hugo held up his hand. "Shh, listen." And Wilgus began to speak in a dreamy monotone. "I'm in a mine, huddled at the face with no light. It's total dark around. I can breathe all right, but the air is sulfuric, stale. I have to adjust, grow a kind of gills in my neck, become a kind of fish in order to live this deep underground. It's so dark I believe I don't have eyes until a prick of light comes toward me through the pitch-black dark of the mine. It's like foxfire. It's like a spark from two thoughts striking one another. It's like the first star that ever was. What gibberish, the Black Duke shouted, suddenly losing all patience and turning away from Wilgus toward Tom, who was deep in a trance by now, ready for questioning. Let's hope this one makes more sense than that other idiot, said the Duke, somewhat calmer now as he took his seat again by the couch where Tom lay. Are you Tom, brother of the legendary rebel outlaw Jack, the Duke asked. Yes. Do you confess to being one of the mountain people seeking independence from the rule of King Condominium III? Yes. What is the name of your rebel band? We ain't got no name that I know of, said Tom. Of course you've got a name, the Duke shouted. All rebel bands have names. What are you, the Freedom Fighters of the Hills, the Hillbilly Liberation Front? Who are you rebels anyway? We're just folks who lives around here, said Tom. Do you admit that you seek to overthrow the dominance of the Condominium Kingdom? Oh, we'd like to do that, all right. Who has taught you such treasonous attitudes, the Duke demanded. Didn't nobody have to teach us, said Tom. We just learned. Liar, the Duke shouted hysterically. Don't you realize that you've been given sodium pentothal, and sodium pentothal makes you want to tell the truth? Tell the truth, Tom. Where is your outlaw brother Jack hiding? He's probably over yonder on Ancient Creek, Tom replied. What? The Duke shouted. What's this? Where? The Duke turned and motioned for all the guards and assistants to gather close around. Where did you say? Ancient Creek, said Tom. He's probably over there staying with Aunt Hayes. Where is this Ancient Creek? The Duke demanded. I never heard of it. It's way back in the hills, said Tom. The Duke searched the faces of his assistants. All of them shook their heads and shrugged. We've never heard of Ancient Creek, said the Duke. I've never even seen it on a map. Ancient Creek don't show up on maps, said Tom. It's too far back in the hills. Well, who is this Aunt Hayes person you mentioned? The Duke snapped. Is that some kind of code name? Oh, no, said Tom. That's her real name. Is she your aunt? Well, she ain't my real aunt, said Tom. She's kind of like everybody's aunt. She's real old now, Aunt Hayes is. How old? Well, they don't nobody know for sure, said Tom. Some says she's 200-300 years old. The Duke slapped Tom with his open hand this time. Then he grabbed him by the shoulders and shook him hard. You're trying to make a fool of me, the Duke shrieked. He was so enraged he choked. Hugo handed him a glass of water. When he had sipped it and rested a moment, he went on. This Ancient Creek, said the Duke. What makes the place so special? Why would Jack hide there? Oh, it's a beautiful place, said Tom. The creek runs down off this high mountain, through these big woods, then down along this big green meadow where deer, all kinds of game comes to feed. There's lots of flowers and birds and little critters running around, all tame and friendly like. They come right up and talk to Aunt Hayes. Aunt Hayes talks to the creatures all the time. Without warning, the Black Duke pounced on Tom and began to pummel him with his fist. Lying dog, insufferable pig, insult the Black Duke with fairy tales, will you? Offend the intelligence of the royal administrator of the hill domain with outrageous nonsense, will you? You'll die for this treason. I'm going to kill you personally. And the Duke would have, too, if Hugo and the guards had not pulled him away from the helpless Tom. To ease the Black Duke's frustrations, Hugo proposed an alternate plan for the capture of Jack. Sire, why not let one of these prisoners go free, so that he may carry word to Jack of the terrible plight of his brothers? Jack is sure to attempt a rescue. If we're unable to go after Jack, let's arrange for the fool to come to us. A wave of relief spread across the Black Duke's face as he listened to the hunchback's proposal. The Duke agreed to Hugo's plan instantly. Will was selected to be set free. He had not yet been doped up with truth serum. The guards removed the chains from his body and escorted him out of the building to the main street of Blaine. As soon as they released him, he took off running for the woods at the edge of town. Later that evening, the Black Duke and his entourage returned to Holiday Land, dragging Wilgus and Tom along in chains. Except for the nagging matter of Jack, all was in readiness for the king's arrival at Holiday Land. The royal suite had been redecorated to the last detail. Flags, banners, colorful decorations of all kinds gave the streets of Holiday Land a festive air. All the king's horses and all the king's men wore sparkling new red uniforms, and the men and women among the administrative personnel sported the latest beautiful people attire. The native peoples who did the routine work around Holiday Land had been issued new work clothes and given a 10% increase in their protein that made their faces gleam with ruddy health. Sumptuous feasts had been prepared. Enormous stores of wine had been laid in. Holiday Land had never looked so lovely as it did now on the eve of King Condominium's arrival. Had it not been for the gnawing threat of Jack and his rebel companions, the Black Duke would have been overcome with joy and satisfaction. But as it was, there was a corner of the Duke's mind that was a nervous wreck. The Duke cursed Jack for denying him the kind of confidence and serenity he felt he deserved in this, his entire life's crucial hour. He cursed the stupid prisoners for the uselessness of their statements. The Duke lay in bed planning cruel revenges on his prisoners, when suddenly the door flew open and Hugo rushed in, breathless with excitement. "Sire, sire, good news, good news," Hugo shouted through an enormous smile which revealed his stained and broken teeth. "What's the meaning of this intrusion?" the Black Duke snapped. "Pardon, pardon, sire," said Hugo, bowing deeply. "But I am certain the news I bring will be a tonic to your nervous disorders. I am pleased to report, sire, that the capture of Jack is imminent and the end of the revolution is a foregone conclusion no later than this time tomorrow night." "How can this be?" said the Duke, throwing aside his satin sheets to don his velvet robe. "What has happened to bring about such a favorable turn of events?" "It's most fortuitous, sire," said Hugo, "most fortuitous indeed. While you were sleeping, we recaptured Jack's brother Will, whom we set free 5 days ago. He was attempting to enter Holiday Land disguised as a kudzu vine. Knowing that time was of the essence, we promptly took him to the interrogation room and administered truth serum to him too. Under questioning, he revealed that his brother Jack plans to attempt a rescue of his brothers on the night of the king's arrival. In addition to liberating all political prisoners, the fiend intends to embarrass you, Black Duke, in the eyes of the king, thus undermining your position as royal administrator of the hill domain." "Impetuous fool," the Black Duke sneered. "What preposterous impertinence!" "The poor peasant plays into the palms of our hands," said Hugo gleefully. "Precisely," said the Black Duke proudly. "When I catch him, I shall have no pity on the plebeian wretch. I shall punish him and all the pathetic people who persist in perpetuating his pernicious rebel program. I shall repay him for all the pain he has caused me. Let him plead for pardon. Let him pray his pagan prayers. I shall not be prevented from putting him through torture so pure—" "Ah, wait, wait," said Hugo. "The Black Duke has yet to hear the best portion of our plan." "Please proceed," said the Duke. "I am certainly well pleased with all you have presented so far. I propose, sire, that we use the full potential of our opportunity to turn the tables on Jack. I propose that we manipulate Jack's own plans and have him hoist himself by his own petard. I propose, sire, that we arrange for you to personally apprehend this Jack right on the stage during the big show tomorrow evening, before the very eyes not only of King Condominium and all his retinue, but in full view of all the people of Holiday Land who will be in attendance. We shall write parts into the play for Will and Tom, and that creepy Wilgus as well, then place them upon the stage as a lure. Jack will be unable to resist this opportunity to liberate his brothers and humiliate you in the process. But we shall be waiting for the peon, fully prepared to pounce like powerful panthers." The Black Duke danced a little jig of joy. "You're a genius, Hugo." "All I know I've learned from you," said Hugo humbly. "You've learned well," said the Duke. "And when this is all over, I shall see that you are richly rewarded." "Thank you, sire. In the meantime, there is much work to be done to complete the details of our scheme. It would be well if you could witness a rehearsal of the Haw-Haw show so that we can find a fitting place to write Will and Tom and Wilgus into the script. The natives are due to begin a rehearsal within the hour. Perhaps you would like to attend." "I should be delighted," said the Duke. "I'm having lunch with Captain Heath and Colonel Deed today. I'll bring them with me." "Very good, sire," said Hugo. The hunchback bowed and took his leave, then hastened across the compound to the grand arena. Hugo used the hour before the dress rehearsal for a final touch-up of Haw-Haw's opening skit, in which a mountain man named Abner Little has a tobacco spitting contest with a fellow hillbilly named Snuff Jones.
The script calls for the contest to be a draw until each man tries to perform the traditional feat of spitting tobacco juice while simultaneously drinking moonshine from a jug. Abner performs this feat with grace and ease, but Snuff chokes and drops the jug to the ground. Snuff still emerges triumphant, however, when the falling jug dents the earth at his feet and strikes oil, making him an instant millionaire, which enables him to leave his farm to go live happily ever after as a king's man in Holiday Land. As Hugo critiqued his performers after the run-through of the first skit, the Black Duke, Captain Heath, and Colonel Deed, merry from the wine and scintillating conversation of their lunch, entered the theater and took seats in the front row, where the king would sit during the performance the following night. Hugo bowed and bade the guests welcome to the rehearsal. Then he turned to the cast members on stage behind him and said, "Okay, gang, let's take it from the top." The Black Duke was vastly amused by the tobacco spitting skit, and when a rustic character named Grandpa Holmes came on stage barefoot with a corncob pipe in his mouth and a straw hat on his head to tell a series of incest jokes while picking a banjo with his toes, he nearly split his sides laughing. Other skits included a situation comedy in which the families of Abner Little and Snuff Jones get into a feud over an outhouse which has unfortunately been built across their common property line. After a mock battle in which the Joneses and the Littles blaze away at each other with hog rifles, Granny Holmes resolves the dispute by enlarging the toilet to include a second hole. The skit ends with Abner and Snuff with their pants down, sitting on the toilet side by side, smoking their corncob pipes and leafing through a Sears Roebuck catalog, admiring the ladies' underwear. "Haw, haw, haw," the Black Duke roared, and Colonel Deed and Captain Heath echoed his laughter. After consultation with Hugo, it was determined that Will and Tom and Wilgus would come on stage to speak their lines just after the outhouse skit, and that would be the moment of Jack's assault and subsequent capture. "Is that Jack ever in for a surprise?" said Captain Heath. "I can hardly wait," said Colonel Deed. All the Duke could say as he led his guests out of the theater was haw, haw, haw. "Hurrah, hurrah! The king, the king! Long live the king! Praises, praises! Welcome, King Condominium III! Hurrah! Welcome, O mighty ruler! Welcome, lovely queen! Hurrah! Long live King Condominium and his mighty host! Welcome, mighty host! Royal court, dukes, nobles, princes, princesses, secretaries of state, interior, health, education, and welfare. Welcome, elegant gentlemen and ladies. Welcome to Holiday Land, one and all. Our city is yours. Pleasures and delights await you. These decorations, fireworks, music, this great throng of people bid you welcome. Welcome to Holiday Land." King Condominium was exhilarated by the tumultuous welcome given him by the people of the hill domain. His old ears could not hear their cheers, but he could see them lined 20 deep along the roads and in the streets of Holiday Land. How happy they seemed. How shining were their faces. How adoring were their eyes as they gazed upon his royal personage. And what a lovely place it was. The fiberglass houses so clean. The astroturf lawns so litter-free. The plastic trees that lined the asphalt boulevard so tidy and dust-free. Oh, how wise of the doctor to send me to this remote outpost of the kingdom, thought the king. Oh, what a tonic it is already for my tired body and low spirits. How very excellent of the Black Duke to prepare so fully for my arrival. And how very especially clever it is of the Duke to arrange a theatrical performance in my honor this very evening. How very splendidly thoughtful it is of him to spare me the ordeal of yet another dreary state banquet and the fatiguing chore of making small talk to a bunch of sycophants and nincompoops. How brilliant, how creative of the Duke to divert us all with a stage show, a program of native wit and music, an evening of delightful surprises. How utterly charming. He knows my taste well, this Duke. A man as bright as he could rise high in my empire. Yes, he could. A man as sharp as he could well become the next director of the Almighty Regional Commission. He might even become director of the True Values Authority someday if he continues such good work as this. After an afternoon rest in the royal suite, servants and ladies in waiting entered to help the royal couple into their evening clothes. Then, as the sun was going down behind the mountains, the king and queen set out arm in arm for the grand arena, followed by the 14 dozen members of the court. As the king and queen entered the theater, all 20,000 people who were already there stood and began to sing "Condominium Kingdom, My Condominium Kingdom" at the tops of their voices. The front rows were filled with king's men and officials of the royal bureaucracy. Dressed in their new uniforms and evening clothes, seated all together in the forward seats of the giant hall, their impression was one of elegance and confidence and pride as they watched their monarch walk majestically down the center aisle. The other half of the audience was made up of natives, dressed in work clothes. They were less brilliant in appearance than their masters, but they formed a solid mass in the rear seats that was pleasing for the king to behold. He could not hear well enough to tell that the applause from the back rows was less enthusiastic than that from the front, but he could see their hands moving. He saw the hands of all 20,000 people clapping, and he saw their lips moving too, heads raised high in song. Splendid, thought the king as he walked down the aisle toward his seat. It's going to be a wonderful show. The men who were to portray Abner Little and Snuff Jones were in full hillbilly costume when they came on stage. They wore overalls and straw hats, and Snuff carried the moonshine jug as he had in the rehearsal. But once they had taken their places front and center on the stage, Snuff set the jug on the floor. Then, instead of turning toward each other and going into their comic routine, the men looked out at the audience, and the man who was to play Abner said, "Good evening, everybody. My name's Sherman Wagner. You all probably know that none of us in the show tonight is professional actors or anything. We're just folks that live around here that the Duke and Hugo thought it would be a good idea to have on stage to entertain the king and his court when they came to visit Holiday Land. Everybody in the show has worked hard to get their parts ready. We hope everybody in the audience has as good a time this evening as us up here on the stage intends to." The Black Duke, who was seated in the front row beside the king, glanced uneasily at Hugo, who sat in the aisle seat beside the Duke. Hugo smiled at the Duke reassuringly. "They're just ad-libbing a little," he whispered, "to make it more natural. The king likes to have things natural." The king's happy expression seemed to confirm what Hugo said. He was sitting up straight with a big grin on his face as he studied the ragged mountaineers on the stage.
You're listening to Gurney Norman reading Ancient Greek. We're going to jump in one last time for just a quick break, but stay tuned for the end of the story coming up. Welcome back to Mountain Talk here on WMMT. No, don't adjust your dial. We are heading past our normal ending time today, but we've just got to hear the end of this story. Today, in honor of the great Gurney Norman, who sadly we lost last month, we're hearing Gurney himself reading his epic folktale, Ancient Greek, in its entirety. And up next, we bring you the last and final part of the story. Where we'll pick things up, the king and his entourage have landed in the hills, and they're looking forward to a stage production by the Hill People, put on just for them. But first, the Hill People have decided from the stage to introduce themselves. Here, once again, is Gurney Norman.
"Thank you, Sherman," said the man who had acted the part of Snuff Jones in the rehearsal. "Folks, my name's Landon Frazier. I'm 51 years old. The last few years I've worked as a custodian of Building 3 here at Holiday Land. But back when I was young, I was a farmer. And so what I thought it might be interesting to tell you all about is that the farm I grew up on was located on that hill over yonder at the east end of Holiday Land, where they've got that ski slope now. My daddy homesteaded that hill when he was just a young man. He had over 200 acres at one time. Most of it was pretty steep, of course, but that hill had big timber on it back in those days. Big, tall, yellow poplar, white oak, 2 men couldn't reach around with both arms. Good hunting in these hills back in those days, too. Squirrel especially. My daddy liked squirrel meat better than anything. He'd bring in half a dozen, Mommy'd fix 'em up good for him, make good gravy. Daddy liked to dip that gravy over his biscuit and eat it. I've known him many a morning to make a breakfast on gravy and biscuit. Get up around 4. Mommy'd be in the kitchen fixing breakfast while Daddy went through the house stirring the fires. After I got big enough to do chores, I'd get up with him, go out around the hill at daylight to get the cows. It wasn't far to go to the pasture, about like from where the tennis court is now on around the hill to where they built that lake. But to a boy, it seemed like a right smart piece, and I'd walk it early in the morning out looking for the cows. They was usually just standing there grazing, waiting for me. But sometimes I'd have to go to the foot of the hill and drive 'em up, scared to death I was taking too long and throwing Daddy behind in his work. Daddy never did like to be behind in his work. He was as good a worker as there was in these parts in those days. I took after him the best I could. I learned from him and from Mommy. And when the farm become mine, I knew how to work it. I was prosperous. That flat place down there where they've got the skating rink was where I raised my sorghum. Used to have big stir-offs every year over there where the recreation hall is now. Our barn stood just out beyond there a ways. The dwelling house was back this way where they've got that shuffleboard court and stuff. Look at it now, it's hard to picture the home we had here then. But I remember it in my mind clear as day. I don't forget. "Hugo, what's the meaning of these digressions?" the Black Duke whispered sharply into the hunchback's ear. "These speeches are not in the ha-ha script." "I'm sure the show will begin soon," said Hugo reassuringly. "Well, it better," said the Duke. "I don't like this ad-libbing one bit." But the next speeches from the people on the stage were equally infuriating to the Duke. A woman named Stella Hall came onto the stage and spoke for 15 minutes about the outrageous treatment she had received at the Royal Welfare Office the day before. "They treated us like dogs in there," said Stella. "I've got a disabled husband and hungry young'uns at home. They acted like that was something to laugh at. I wanted to claw their damn eyes out. I told them, I said, you all don't care nothing about people. They's people cold, needing places to live. They's people hungry in these hills. They's people out walking the railroad tracks, picking up coal to burn, keep warm with. That ain't right for the native people to suffer while all them damn condominium people sliding down a ski slope." A round of applause from the back rows of the theater followed Stella's speech, causing the king and his court to turn and look at the natives sourly. "This outrage must cease," the Black Duke hissed. But before Hugo could reply to the Duke, another man came out on the stage and began to make a speech. "My name's Randolph Campbell," the man said. "I'm 49 years old. I've lived in these hills all my life, through good times and bad. But I have to say that there's been a lot more bad times than good, and it seems like they're getting worser all the time. Last fall, there's a bunch of royal strip miners come on my mommy's land at the head of Bull Creek, started bulldozing her pasture away without saying a word to her. I went up to ask them what they was doing. Before I could get a word out, 5 big laws come up, grabbed me by the arms, drugged me off to jail, beat me black and blue. The leader of it was that son of a bitch they call Hog Giles Bunyan. He's the big stripper around here. He's probably out there in the audience right now hearing me call him that. I hope you are, Hog Giles. I want you and everybody else in this big auditorium to know that I called you a coward and a crook and a lying dog that's got rich off the land and coal of the poor people of these hills. You think you've got everybody around here afraid of you, but you ain't. I ain't afraid of you. And let me tell you something else. Next time you come about me, you better have more than 5 of your gun thugs with you. That's all I got to say." The applause for Randolph's speech was general throughout the back seats of the arena, and this time several King's men stood up to look malevolently at the people behind them. King Condominium noticed them standing, and he turned to look at the people too. Unable to hear as he was, he couldn't make out what was going on exactly, but he could feel the tension of the moment. He sensed the excitement in the room, and it thrilled him. He understood now this is all part of the show. What a fantastic show. The king hadn't been entertained this well in years. Ah, that Duke, thought the king, that clever Black Duke. What an endlessly imaginative host he is. "Jolly good show, old chap," said the king to the Duke. "Jolly good show." The Black Duke thanked the king. But his real attention was on the hillbillies on stage who were deviating from the script so outrageously. "This treasonous farce must not continue," he said to Hugo. "Put a stop to it at once." Hugo nodded. "I'll sneak around backstage to see what I can do." "Get those stupid prisoners out there on the stage," the Duke commanded. "It's time to spring our trap on Jack." "Aye, sire," said Hugo. The hunchback slid out of his seat and limped off through the door that led backstage. Soon after Hugo went backstage, Will and Tom and Wilgus came out and took their places next to the others who had already spoken. A buzz of excited conversation rose above the audience when the three young men came out, the native people looking at each other and grinning, while the king's men in the front rows looked at each other in bewilderment and consternation. As Will stepped forward to speak, the Black Duke saw Captain Heath leading a platoon of armed king's men toward the stage. Aha, thought the Duke, at last the trap is going to be sprung. A hush fell over the crowd as Will stepped forward to speak. "Good evening, everybody," he said. "My name's Will. I'm Jack's brother. This here's my other brother, Tom, and this is Wilgus Collier, a friend of ours from over Trace Fork way. We've all had a pretty hard time this week. The Black Duke's had us in jail, and he's been pretty heavy on us. So we ain't up to making any long speeches. Wilgus and Tom told me to speak for them. So what I thought I'd do is just quote Mother Jones and say that all us mountain people's got to do is pray for the dead and fight like hell for the living." As soon as his words were out, the mountain people leaped to their feet, 10,000 strong, all cheering and shouting, whistling and applauding furiously. The king's men leaped to their feet too and began babbling to each other excitedly. By now, Captain Heath's platoon had reached the stage. When King Condominium saw the soldiers going up the steps, he cackled in glee and poked the Black Duke in the ribs with his elbow. "Black Duke, this is the finest show I've ever seen in my whole life," said the king. "You've thought of everything. You've left out nothing. You're a genius, my boy, and I'm going to reward you for it. How'd you like to be director of ARC? Before the Duke could answer, a second squad of soldiers ran past them down the aisle. "It's just fantastic," the king shouted to the Duke above the rising pandemonium in the arena. "Black Duke, you could even be director of TVA if you want to." "I want to," the Black Duke answered. But his words were drowned in the noise that was rising all around. King's men were on the stage now, attempting to put handcuffs on Randolph Campbell, who resisted furiously until a soldier smashed him in the chest with his rifle butt. Other soldiers lashed out at Will and Tom and Wilgus, at Stella, at Aubrey Hall, at all the native people within range. Landon sank to the floor with a bleeding head. Aubrey and Sherman grappled with two king's men to protect Wilgus, who had thrown himself across Landon to shield him from further blows, while Stella, screeching like a wildcat, clawed the face of a soldier who was swinging at Aubrey. The fight was fairly even until the second squad of king's men reached the stage from the right. They swarmed over the battered natives, swinging their guns like clubs, and for a moment the natives completely disappeared beneath the mass of redcoats. But then from the wings came a charge of other mountain people to join the fray, a good dozen of them who pounced on the startled soldiers and flailed away. The fight itself was astounding enough for the Black Duke. But what was utterly incredible to him was the fact that among the charging natives was the hunchback Hugo, who, like the others, had torn into the mass of redcoats with fury. There's got to be some mistake, the Black Duke thought, as he saw his faithful assistant Hugo beat up a uniformed king's man with his fists. There surely must be some mistake. The Black Duke watched in horror as the hunchback pulled two soldiers off the prostrate forms of Wilgus and Landon and hurled them off the stage into the orchestra pit. "This behavior is definitely not part of the script," the Duke said to himself. Then he yelled, "Hugo, Hugo, what in God's name are you doing?" Hugo paused in his combat for a moment to look down at the Black Duke from the stage. Swiftly he stripped off his coat and sweater and the harness underneath that had held his phony hunchback in place. Then with both hands he removed the hideous rubber mask that had covered his face and threw it aside. Through a grin of triumph, the young man thus revealed said, "My name's not Hugo, you fool, I'm Jack!" "Kill him!" the Black Duke screamed. A soldier's voice yelled, "Fire!" Curtain, dark, gunshots, people screaming, rushing for the doors, king's men, natives, men and women of the court pushing, bolting for the exits, squirting out in streams through doors and windows. "Fire! Kill him!" Ragged volleys, muzzle flashes winking in the dark. Jack falls to the stage floor, wounded, shot through the arm and side. Randolph falls beside him, dead, shot in the chest and head. Sherman falls, 2 bullets in his leg. A bullet creases Stella's neck as she yells, "Fight for the living!" A rifle butt strikes Wilgus on the head. Explosions ring in his mind, like blasting in a mine. I'm in a mine, he thinks, huddled at the face with no light. I can breathe all right, but the air is sulfuric, stale. I have to adjust, grow a kind of gills in my neck, become a fish in order to live this deep underground. It's so dark I believe I don't have eyes until a prick of light comes toward me through the pitch-black dark of the mine. It's like foxfire. It's like a spark from two thoughts striking one another. It's like the first star that ever was. Slowly it floats toward me, bearing a promise to bore my forehead like a breast auger, like a mine drill. Shavings coil out like old memories, form shapes around the light. They form my father with the carbide lamp on his head. They form my mother wearing a shiny brooch at her throat. And then they become Jesus carrying a candle that becomes a minnow and swims away through the mine's dark river. I can't see it, but I hear the river gurgling. I panic, trying to decide whether to follow or stay where I am. Follow, says a voice within the water. Come with me. I huddle against the face of the coal, wondering if my eyes are open or closed. They're open, says the voice within the water. Come with me. Face down in dark water, I see ancient ferns, tall as tipples 1,000,000 years ago beneath the sea. As the water lightens, I see a firmament arise, a lovely wilderness of plains and valleys and mountains, with creeks flowing in the valleys past woods and meadows, past bottomland where willows grow and sycamores, and muskrats in their holes, and turtles in the mud, and kingfishers swooping low across the water as the sun goes down, filling the sky with orange and purple light. The water is amber-colored now. I see minnows in it. I see a perch swim by. I see brilliant pebbles on the bottom and green waving grass beneath the water. I see a sandbar reaching out from the shore. My feet sink into it. Planted there, I rise up like a tree out of the water, a flowering shrub with gnarled branches, thick with leaves, adorned by blossoms white as clouds, moist with the dew of a brand new April evening. Before me is a clearing, surrounded by trees, a green meadow, marked in the center by an ancient stone, gray and weathered, writing on it obscure as hieroglyphics. See the stone, says the voice within the water, and beyond the stone, see that old woman coming out of the trees. See the wounded people limping along behind her. See Stella. See Sherman Wagner. See Will and Tom carrying their brother Jack. And see yourself among them, Wilgus, among the wounded, following that old woman, Aunt Hayes, as she walks across the meadow, past the stone, walks on toward the dogwood tree, which stands by the waters of Ancient Creek. Now hear old Hayes, as she leads the people to the tree. Gather now, she says, gather neath the dogwood. Sit in a circle, rest yourselves. I'll go to the woods and get some herbs, and when I get back, we'll get on with the healing. The brown mole watched Aunt Hayes cross Ancient Creek on stepping stones and enter the woods on his side. Hayes looked the same as she had forever, an old woman with a walking stick, black shawl around her shoulders, long white hair flowing down. But there was something unusual about Aunt Hayes this afternoon. It was the way she walked. She was walking fast, in a hurry, headed somewhere quick. When she came by the brown mole's burrow, the mole stood up and said, "Aunt Hayes, how come you're running through the woods in such a hurry?" "Hello, Mole," Aunt Hayes replied. "I was hoping I'd run into you. I've got some wounded people over by the dogwood tree. I'm looking for a linn tree to dig a root to use in some healing salve I'm making. Do you know of any linn trees nearby?" "Sure," said the mole. "I was digging under one just the other day. Come on and I'll take you to it." The mole led Aunt Hayes on into the woods until they came to a linn tree. "Thank you, Mole," the old woman said. "This is the very tree I need." And Aunt Hayes bent over and started to dig in the ground with the end of her walking stick. "Here, Aunt Hayes, let me do that," said the mole. And before Hayes could reply, the mole commenced scratching and rooting in the loamy forest floor. In a few minutes he had exposed a long, sturdy linn root about a foot deep in the ground. "That's wonderful," said Aunt Hayes. "Now if we just had something to cut that root with." "Let me bite it through for you," said a beaver, who had strolled in from the creek to see what was going on. "I can bite through a linn root in a jiffy." With a few quick bites of his large buck teeth, the beaver cut the root and handed the length of it up to Aunt Hayes. "How come you want this linn root, Aunt Hayes?" the beaver asked. Well, I'm going to make a salve and heal some wounded people, Hayes replied. Who are the people? Asked an owl, perched in the top of a linn tree, listening to all that was said. Well, they're friends of mine from over in the settlement, said Aunt Hayes. There's been trouble over there. I'm trying to help them out. In fact, Al, I wonder if you wouldn't do something to help us out. What do you want me to do, Aunt Hayes? I need you to fly across the mountains to the settlements and spy out what's going on over there. These wounded people's in need of news. Could you go over and see what you can find out for us? I'll be glad to, said the owl, and with a flap of his wings he flew away to begin his errands. Aunt Hayes thanked the linn tree for the gift of the root. She thanked the mole and beaver for their help. Then she set out through the woods toward the meadow again, where the wounded people were waiting under the dogwood tree. Wilgus watched Aunt Hayes prepare the healing salve. He watched her scrape the skin and bark from the linn root into a bowl, then chop it fine with her knife. Aunt Hayes added some comfrey leaves and sassafras bark and some jellicoe root she'd carried in her pouch. What we need now is some water from Ancient Creek, Aunt Hayes said. She handed Wilgus a cup and told him to go to the creek and fill it. When he came back with the water, the old woman poured a few drops into the bowl, then set the cup aside. As she stirred the potion, she chanted, Shalanta, Shalanta, Loon, La Roon. After a while, Aunt Hayes said, Okay, everybody scoot in close now, and I'll doctor your wounds. With her fingers, Aunt Hayes smeared the healing salve on Wilgus's forehead. She put salve on the bullet wounds in Stella's neck. She treated Sherman Wagner's wounded leg and several bruises that Will and Tom had on their bodies. Aunt Hayes set the bowl aside then and picked up the cup of water. She handed the cup to Wilgus and told him to take a drink and pass it around for the others to drink from, too. When the cup returned to Aunt Hayes, she sipped from it. Then she said, Now let's help old Jack to get him a drink. Lift his head up there, Wilgus. Rest his head on your knee. I'll hold the cup to his mouth. Wilgus moved into the center of the circle and gently raised Jack's head and slid his leg under it. Jack's eyes were closed and his lips were pale, and his breathing was so shallow his chest hardly moved. But Jack's flesh was warm. There was life in him yet. When Jack had sipped the water, his eyelids fluttered open briefly. He and Wilgus looked into each other's eyes. Jack tried to sit up then, but Aunt Hayes said, We're not finished yet. Gently, she applied the healing salve to the terrible wound in Jack's side. Then she directed Wilgus to lay him on the ground again and moved back to his place in the circle. Wilgus watched Aunt Hayes stretch out her arms and hold her hands over Jack. 3 times she circled her hands above his head, chanting as she did so, Shalanta, Shalanta, Roon la Loon. Aunt Hayes sat a while with her eyes closed. Then she motioned for all the people in the circle to scoot in tight around Jack and place their hands on him. Wilgus moved in close and rested his hand on Jack's chest. Aunt Hayes held Jack's face in both her hands. When everybody was in place, close to Jack, Aunt Hayes said, Shh now, you all listen. The rushing sound of Ancient Creek nearby grew louder into night as Wilgus listened. The water made a music in his ears. There were voices in it. There was moonlight on the water, breaking on the rushing waves and tiny sprays that flashed around the rocks and caught the rays of the full moon in the sky. From somewhere far away in the darkness, an owl began to hoot. The sound of the owl and the rushing sound of the water rose and fell against each other for a long time. Then they both faded as Aunt Hayes began to speak again. This meadow here by Ancient Creek is my family's old burying place, Aunt Hayes said. Her voice was low and strong as a storyteller's now, warming to the tale. It's a wonder-working power place on the ground that people have been coming to for healing for more generations than I know about. There's just the one gravestone out yonder in the meadow to mark it, but all my people are buried here. My ancestors from generations way back in the ages are all laid here, and I'll be buried here myself one day. It's a powerful place. Power flows right out of the ground on Ancient Creek. It flows from the water sound and the air around. It flows down on us from the dogwood tree above. It passes through our bodies as we sit here, through our hands,
out into Jack. It's helping to heal poor Jack. Time the sun comes up tomorrow, Jack's going to be good as new. All of us are. For as we let the power flow through us to Him, it runs around our circle and hooks us up together and helps heal our wounds and give us new life too. We all need new life and strength, for there's a sight of work to do. You all heard the owl hoot a while ago. That was my friend the owl telling what he found out over in the settlements today. He says the native people all over the hills are in resistance to the king's men now, and that a big battle's shaping up. He says Landon Frazier has taken his old farm back, and that he means to keep it this time. He says old Landon's already started planting nut trees on the ski slope, and he plans to get a crop of sorghum in his bottomland.
The king's men are ganging up to stop Landon from doing that, and so the word's gone out all over the hills for the people to come and help Landon reclaim his farm. So we'll all be getting up early tomorrow morning and going back over the mountains, back to the settlements to help Landon. Tonight we'll rest and heal. You need your rest in order for the power to work and heal your wounds. But by sunrise you'll all feel good again, ready to hike the hills and go back to stand beside of Landon when the battle comes. So the thing for us to do right now is all lay down close to Jack, cuddle in close around him, keep him warm. Tomorrow morning early, we'll all set out together across the hills. Wilgus and Stella and Sherman and Will and Tom all laid down and snuggled in close to each other on the ground. When they were settled, Aunt Hayes took off her shawl and spread it over the people. Then she went around the circle, tucking it in. Most of the people went to sleep as soon as they laid down, but Wilgus lay awake a while. Snug among his fellows, he lay beneath the mantle, looking up at the moist moonlight on the blossoms of the dogwood tree. The white tree flowers were what he saw. What he heard was the water rushing by. He heard voices in it. I love to tell the story, sang the water, of unseen things above. Go to sleep now, said the water. Go to sleep and dream Laloon. Dream Shalanta. Dream Laloon. That's the end.
You've been listening to Gurney Norman reading in full his epic folktale, Ancient Creek. What you just heard was originally released as a spoken word album on our own June Appal Records back in 1976. We also put out a remastered version on CD in 2012, and a book version of the story is available from Ohio University Press. We'll have more on Gurney Norman's life and legacy in upcoming editions of Mountain Talk. But for now, thanks so much for listening and for heading to Ancient Creek with us. For WMMT, I'm Parker Hobson.